Flirting has come a long way. I used to have to call people, because I'm older. I used to have to call people. And when I was growing up, and that was even worse, there was a push-button phone. And if you had to ask out a girl, you had to call her on the phone. It was horrifying. And you had to dial me, ma, mo. And then you'd stall me, ma, moo. And then you have to wait and talk, and I go, hello? Hey, you don't want to go to the prom with me, right? You probably don't. Okay, bye. Horrifying. You have it so easy now. I'd have to go to their locker and ask them out face to face. Sickening. You know, I'm like, I know the prom's this week, and they're like this. You'll never know when you text that face of them going, whoa, you're not gonna. Sometimes when you go to a restaurant, I went to like a 6-star restaurant, one better. And, you know, hostesses are very nice, but they like to strike up a little jibber jabber, you know, before you sit down. But it always goes nowhere because it's only 10 feet, you know? So she's like, Mr. Spade, we're so excited to have you. How was your week? And I go, oh, I had a little bit of a health scare. Here we are. I go, I'm sure it's nothing. Don't worry about me. I mean, I'll get a CAT scan. I'll CC the whole hostess stand. But one time a couple years ago, I was on a date and I was trying to puff up, and there's this snooty maitre d', and I'm waiting, and he finally goes, okay, right this way, ladies. And I go, still us? And I go, So I start walking, but it sort of cooled me down a little bit in front of the girl. So I'm walking and I'm steaming, toot. And I'm like, I'm getting so mad. I go, when he sees me, he's gonna freak out. And then I look and some guy's like, Joe Dirt. I'm like, yes, I look like a guy, exactly. So I start going and I go, this guy's gonna fire himself. This is gonna be great. And then there's some stairs and he looks right at me and goes, watch your step, gals. And I go, again? I am a sir. I have a mustache, sort of. Anyway, eat at home. So I went to Magic Mountain this weekend, which is an amusement park. They call it Six Flags Magic Mountain. You don't need the Six Flags part. You know, you don't need two names. Magic Mountain is it. You know what I mean? Let me tell you something. In terms of marketing, Magic Mountain. It's hooky, it's catchy, all right? I know showbiz. Magic Mountain. Six Flags, who cares about that? How many flags are at your amusement park? No one says that. 6, oh. 6 out of 10? No, just 6, it's nowhere, right? So Magic Mountain. The point is, it's definitely more mountain than magic. All right. Honestly, spoiler alert, I got some bad news. It's not even 50-50. It's barely magic, 99% mountain. It's like cheese on pasta. Here's the magic part. Here's the mountain part. Stop, no. More mountain. All mountain. If you don't believe me, ask my step counter. Because it was like, whee! It was literally like smoking. It was women seizing up all the gears in there. Because my pint-sized little spindly noodle legs have never dealt with so much trauma. I took my 11-year-old kid because I'm trying to be your hero. And, but I also have a bad neck, so she wants to go on all the rides. I'm like, we're here. Can we just look around at the scenery and enjoy life? I can't even get to focus on the rides because I'm looking at the Mount Everest they're sitting on. It looks like an inspirational poster of a mountain and me trying to think about it with the word determination under it, you know. So I get on one ride. I only did one, and it f***ed me up, of course, you know. It's not a fun little roller coaster like, woo, it's scary. It's literally like, most of them are based on a car crash. You know what I mean? This one's called Telephone Pole. It's like 100 miles an hour, then wham! Stop on a dime, and everyone's like, ugh. People are walking up crying and calling lawyers. I'm basically slumped in the ride. They have to bring the jaws of life to get me out. You know. The worst part is I bought one of those scammer passes for VIPs, you know? One where you cut in front of the line. And at first, I'm whizzing by people. They're like, hey, they're all excited. Joe Dirt, bench warmers. And then you do it twice. They're still in line. They're like, hey, you, dude. I'm calling the cops. So am I a hero? Who knows? I don't know. All right, bye.